Ever since I was adopted by my family, life had been perfect. They took care of me the best they could, taking me wherever I wanted to go and letting me do almost anything I wanted. They were very different from me, but I didn't mind. We would often get stared at because people didn't understand how we could be so different, which, honestly, I found kind of silly. I guess people don't really understand how a family with an adopted daughter could be so happy. The only thing that mattered was that my parents loved me just as much as I loved them, but when they had first adopted me, I could tell there was some hesitance. I was the last kid left in the adoption center, so I was the only option they had. At first, I wasn't even sure if they'd go through with it, but sure enough, they signed all the paperwork, and we went home together that day. My parents have always homeschooled me for some reason, but one day they decided to register me for normal public school.
We've taught you all we know. It's only fair if you're allowed to go to public school. We wouldn't want you falling behind because of us.
It made sense in my head, but I still wasn't 100% sure. The only depiction of public schools I'd seen were in the movies, and in all of those, there were always bullies who picked on the new kids. I thought this was how all schools would be, since that's all I ever saw. Naturally, I was terrified to go into a new school. I didn't want to get bullied and have my lunch money stolen. Being new in a place where everyone already knew each other was also just as terrifying. I tried to protest. Do I have to? What about the bullies? I don't want to be bullied since I'd be new. My dad only laughed and gently shook his head.
You know that's only in the movies, right? That almost never happens in real life. That's why you need to go to school, so you're able to learn more about the world.
I gave in, since I knew he was probably right, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so I began going to school. I wasn't the top of my class, but I was doing well enough for my parents to still be very proud of me. I didn't make many friends, but I didn't really want any to begin with. I was fine by myself, and I honestly preferred things like that. However, I wouldn't feel that way for long. All too soon, I'd wish I had surrounded myself with more people. Because one dreadful day, I heard my parents talking.
I just think one more couldn't hurt, right?
Maybe you're right. This time, they'd be ours though, right? We wouldn't be adopting another one.
Yes, of course. We get stared at already with that one. We don't need to add to that with another.
If it's what you really want, then I guess I don't see much of a problem.
I wasn't 100% sure, but it sounded like that they were talking about me. But I was confused what they were referring to. I wasn't sure how to feel at the time because nothing they were saying made sense. However, in a few months, I would understand perfectly. As time went on, it became very obvious that my mom was pregnant, and instantly it clicked in my head. They had been talking about having another child, but if that was true, that means they were also talking about me, and since I didn't fully understand what they were talking about, I chose to ignore it. A few months later, I had a baby sister. Everything was going fine at first. We all got along, the new baby was easy to take care of. But that didn't last. She started demanding more and more attention from our parents. After a while, they'd hardly ever spoke to me. In school, I was getting straight A's on my report card, and they'd pay me almost no attention. It was as if nothing that I did was ever good enough for them. They would only give me the bare minimum of praise.
That's nice, dear.
Why don't you go study in your room?
I was honestly shocked. I couldn't believe my parents could do this to me. One day, I overheard a conversation that would change my life for the worse.
2 is too much. We can't handle them.
Yeah, I thought it'd be easier, but both are incredibly hard to manage.
So what should we do?
Can we just make a return at the adoption center? I'd rather keep our own flesh and blood if we had to choose between them.
My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It only got worse as I listened.
I don't think they do. We'd have to just leave her in a box or something.
On the side of the road?
Or somewhere safer like the sidewalk, but we could leave it anywhere, I guess.
And with that, I ran out of the house crying. It wasn't something that I had planned, so I didn't take any of my things, but I didn't look back. I had thought they really loved me. But once they had a kid of their own, they were ready to just throw me out. It was so unfair, I wanted to scream. I was out on the streets now, so I'd have to find somewhere to live. In a panic, I found a few boxes next to a shop and set them up in an alley so that I'd be able to sleep in them and keep warm. I cried myself to sleep that night as I knew that I was officially homeless, and I didn't care if anyone heard. My parents had been ready to throw me out. For the second time in my life, I had been abandoned. Only this time it hurt so much more. I spent days out on the streets, eating whatever I could find, just trying to survive on my own. Until one day,
Little girl, are you all right?
I looked around for the voice I'd heard to find a tall woman, dressed in a gold dress with a really big white hat on, and round sunglasses looking at me. What?
Are you all right?
Oh,
you poor thing. I'll take you to my house if you'd like. That, so you won't be out in the streets anymore, is dangerous out here.
Yes, sure. And with that, I was whisked away to her home, a 3-story mansion in the middle of a secluded forest. She took me inside, where she gave me food, the best food I'd had in a very, very long time, and showed me where I would be sleeping. It was a massive bedroom, 5x bigger than my old one. I was still in shock from everything. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. It seemed almost too good to be true, and yet it was. The woman told me her name was Madeline, and she'd be more than happy to take me in as her own. From that day on, I lived with her in her giant house. I got all the food I could ever want, and got to do whatever I'd like again. We went into town together, and I went with her on vacation all around the world. Of course, I never asked for more than what I'd been given. I didn't want to seem greedy or anything, but she cared for me as if I was her own, and it made me feel very special. I was living a life I would never in a million years think that I would ever be able to live, and it was magical. Madeline had a grown-up son who lived in another city and had wanted a daughter, but she wasn't able to conceive due to her age. Madeline had become my new mother and had even filed the proper paperwork to adopt me. It was a dream come true, and when I got older, she even paid for me to go to prestigious university. When I had ran away, I didn't fathom that my life would have turned out this way. But then I got some terrible news. My former parents sent a letter while I was away at university. Tragedy had struck. My little sister had become very ill and had passed away. The mix of emotions were so confusing. On the one hand, they had been eager to just abandon me, but on the other, I did feel saddened, as my sister, who I had known and loved for years, passed away. Madeline was very supportive, though, which made it easier. As if that wasn't shocking enough, though, my former parents were begging for me to come back and live with them. They claimed that they now knew that they had made a mistake and that they desperately wanted me to come home and for us to be a family again. It took me all of 2 seconds to decide. After all, Madeline loved me for who I was and didn't care that I was adopted. She had shown me true love and was a caring and supportive parent, while my former parents were planning on throwing me away as soon as I was a bit of an inconvenience to them. And so I crumpled up the letter and threw it away and never spoke to them again. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.